I'm Georgie from Real Bread by George, and I'm just going to show you a short video of mixing your sourdough. So I have equipment-wise a bowl, I have water. This is filtered tank water. If you're on town water, water with chlorine added, just boil and cool it down and it'll be fine. Chlorine is antibacterial, which we don't want in our starter. A mixing spatula, and of course, starter and some flour. So first, before we get started, I want to show you my starter. It's really active and bubbly. If I take the lid off there, you can see how active it is. This is a 100% hydration starter, so that means it's equal parts water to flour. The flour in this starter, and flour I always use in my starter, is made of 50% rye and 50% baker's flour. I find that a really good base for any flour combo that you want to use in your loaves. Smell-wise, it's quite cidery, quite fruity too, so it's kind of like a fruity apple cider. I do find it changes with the season. Sometimes it's quite buttery and honeyish. If you do notice that your starter's getting quite acidic and sour smelling or acetone smelling, it's a sign that you're not discarding enough before each feed. So you want to make sure you're keeping those acid levels low. Acid in your sourdough will destroy the structural integrity of your gluten proteins and make your dough unable to rise as much as it would otherwise. Okay, so let's get started. The recipe that I'm using today is what I start my beginning students on. So it's a moderate hydration sourdough, hydration referring to the ratio of water to flour. So in this one I use about 700 mils of water. It's really good to have tearing scales, especially when they work. Okay. Okay, I'll add my starter now. So I want to add 200 grams of really active starter. Now you can see that the starter is healthy and happy because it's floating to the top of the water. Okay, the first thing you'll want to do is just agitate this starter in the water. You can see that it's all floating in there. You can get your hands into what you want to achieve here is that the starter is dispersed in the water. It's not going to fully dissolve, but at least this will help the bacteria from the starter disperse evenly throughout your flour. Okay, I'm now going to add a kilo of flour. Try and get a good stone ground organic baker's flour. I think you're going to a lot of effort to make this beautiful sourdough, so you might as well use good flour. Okay, now I'm going to mix it with my hands. I do always get asked in classes, can I use my mixer or my Thermomix? Absolutely you can, but I think it's a really good idea to start your sourdough journey with mixing by hand. Getting a good feel for the dough and how the texture changes throughout the process. It's fairly intimate knowledge and you're not going to get that with using a mixer. Also a strong possibility you'll overmix using a mixer. It's probably about 8 to 10 times more powerful than a hand mix. You don't want to overdevelop gluten at this stage, so get your hands dirty. Okay, so get your hands in and I find the initial motion squeezing works quite well. Just stirring the dough with my hands, squeezing it together. Your aim at this stage is simply to get all that water to absorb into the flour so that you don't have any dry pockets of flour. Nothing more than that. No kneading required, no overworking required. Just get that water absorbed into the flour. Now, one reason why you would aim to head up towards a higher hydration dough as you become more skilled is this is a lot easier. The bread from a higher hydration sourdough also has a wonderful shelf life. So there's a few benefits, but a lot of the handling skills are a bit more complex at a higher hydration. So this is a good place to start. Okay, so it's nearly done. Always a really good idea to just lift your dough and check bottom center because sometimes you have a cheeky little pocket of dry flour residing there. Okay, this is looking good. Okay, so I've finished my first mix. You'll notice the appearance at the moment is really scrappy and untidy. We call this shreddy dough. I can stretch it, it's gonna break apart, it's a sticky mess. I want you to note this, and it's good to feel it, because it's going to change remarkably as we do all the things we're going to do to our dough. But this is initially mixed, shreddy dough. Now that the mix is done, I'm going to leave the dough to rest for half an hour. This rest period is known as the autolyse, before I add the salt. So this time of rest just helps the gluten to develop, and it helps the starter to take hold before you're adding a hostile agent, salt. Traditionally, you would do an autolyse without the starter, but I do find baking at home, this works really well to just give your starter a head start in the dough. The starter is adding quite a bit of your water content to your dough as well, so adding it initially does help with the mixing process and make that a bit easier. So half an hour rest now, we'll come back to it and add the salt, and we'll observe how the texture has changed through no work at all, just rest. Okay, drape with a tea towel so that your dough doesn't become dehydrated while it rests, and enjoy a glass of wine. Thank you for taking the time to check out this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Real Bread by George, or online at www.realbreadbygeorge.com.au.